right, everybody. So, good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to all of you, our viewers and virtual audiences, wherever you are in the world. Since it's still January, I would like to wish everyone a happy, prosperous, and safe new year. Hope you and your family are doing very well in spite of the pandemic situation we are in. My name is Eric Barsatan, a member of the Knights of Rizal Aloha chapter here in Hawaii, and I will be your MC for today's second lecture in our Rizalian lecture series. I would like to remind everyone to mute your microphones when you are not speaking, and I now would like to call on Sir June Colmenares, KGCR Commander of the Knights of Rizal Aloha chapter, to give the welcome remarks.
Thank you, Sir Eric. In behalf of the officers and members of the Knights of Rizal Aloha chapter, I would like to greet you with a warm aloha and welcome to this second lecture in our Rizalian lecture series. This lecture series is being held in order to address one of the main objectives of the Knights of Rizal, which is to study and to propagate not only the life and works of Dr. Jose Rizal, but more importantly, the ideals and the principles which he followed. So it is our hope that through this lecture, we will be able to learn more about Jose Rizal and promote his teachings as well. So thank you for coming, and just relax and enjoy the lecture. Thank you.
Thank you, Sir June. Before we proceed, I would like to remind our participants that the lecture will be for 30 to 45 minutes and will be immediately followed by a couple of 10-minute reactions. There will be a 30-minute Q&A session after the reactions. I'm sorry, for the Q&A portion, we ask that you write down your questions in our chat box and identify yourself. So make sure that you include your name and email address. We will read those written questions first before we entertain any live questions. And if you run out of time, questions left unread and unanswered will be given to the lecturer, and he will respond to them directly via email or through Facebook. And that's the reason why it's very important to identify yourself and include your name and email address in your written questions through the chat box. I now would like to call on Sir Raji Bugsit, Knights of Rizal, our chapter exchequer, to introduce our distinguished guest lecturer.
Thank you, Sir Eric. Good evening, everyone. It is an honor to introduce our second lecturer in our Rizalian lecture series, Sir Edwin Bael, KGOR. He is a trained lawyer as well as policy and national security analyst with experiences as a career diplomat, practicing attorney, and management consultant. He is a graduate of political science and law with master's degree in public administration and national security administration. Sir Edwin joined the Philippine Foreign Service and had stints as consul general in Madrid, Honolulu, Canberra, and Los Angeles before retiring in 2002. He managed an immigration law firm and was a member of the board of directors of the New Americans Museum in San Diego from 2004 to 2009. Then worked as a business consultant in Arizona before returning to the Philippines in 2012. From 2013 to 2016, he was a member of the Project Management Institute and Deputy Director of the Philippines, California Advanced Research Institute's project of the Commission on Higher Education. In 2016, he was appointed as Undersecretary at the Office of the Presidential Advisor on Overseas Filipino Workers and Muslim Concerns, a position he still occupies. In Knight Grand Officer Rizal, Sir Edwin was Supreme Archivist of the Knights of Rizal Supreme Council from 2014 to 2016. Tonight, he will talk about the Rizal's unfinished revolution. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sir Edwin Bael.
Thank you very much, sir. Good morning, Manila, and good evening, Honolulu. Greetings to all participants. I want to thank you all for attending this lecture forum of the Aloha chapter of the Knights of Rizal. Of course, I want to give special thanks to Aloha's chapter commander, Sir Dr. June Colmenares, KGCR, for his initiative, leadership, and patriotism, making this sharing a reality. Of course, he did it with the Aloha chapter's dynamism, among whom are the Dr. Raymond Leongson and the other participants from Aloha. I want to acknowledge, if any, participants from the Philippines and the Supreme Council, and from our ladies groups and our kaparis, the Kabataang Pangarap ni Rizal. Today, we shall talk of Rizal's concept of revolution that, to me, emphasizes the internal radical changes among the people, a revolution that takes a longer time to fully unfold. Much like the way the revolution of Jesus Christ began with only 12 apostles and St. Paul, and went through a lot of suffering before it became a teaching for all over the world. Allow me first to share with you the challenge I faced when, in 2000, the Philippine Consulate General in Los Angeles, a group of officers from the Supreme Council, led by then Supreme Commander Roger Kiambao, initiated me into knighthood. I was very thankful, happy, feeling that I could wear Knights of Rizal uniforms and paraphernalia, presuming I would gain more respect from people. And I could be in photo ops during Rizal commemoration activities. My challenge was to answer my own question. Are those all that being a Knight of Rizal means? Definitely not. For our charter, Republic Act 646, clearly states in its preambles and provisions the reasons why and for what purposes the Order of the Knights of Rizal exists. We are expected to study Rizal and his teachings and spread it among our peoples and other nationalities to inculcate and foster patriotism and nationalism, which teaching of noble attitudes and mindsets is duly recognized by our 1987 Philippine Constitution among state policies. So I read up on Rizal, not completely though, and I found there's so much to learn of his diagnosis of the archipelago's political, economic, and social situation, and his prescriptions to address the national cancer. So much to learn, so much to share. And I believe he did not just want to reform Philippine society, but to overturn prevalent beliefs, values, and habits in accord with his magnificent obsession as expressed in stanzas 4 and 5 of the Last Farewell. Let me read the English translation that I made. My dreams when scarcely a lad adolescent, my dreams when a young man all filled with vigor, were to see you one day, jewel of the sea of the Orient, the dark eyes dry, the smooth forehead head high and bent, without frown, without wrinkles, without blushes of eye color. Dream of my life, my ardent, living passion and cry. Health shouts to you the soul that soon shall depart. Health, oh how lovely it is to fall, to give you power to fly, to die, to give you vigor to live, under your heaven to die, and in your enchanted land to sleep forever, never apart. Stanza 4 tells us of his vision of his perlas ng Silanganan, a sovereign nation with no reasons to cry, to bow, to doubt, to fear, or to be ashamed. And stanza 5 says, he was happy to die that this nation may truly live and fly. In the Mi Retiro poem written in the Pitan, he expressed hope, fervent hope, saying, and I have faith, and I hope it must shine one day when the force of idea conquers the brutal force, that after the struggle and this protracted agony, another voice, more sonorous, more happy, will know how to sing the triumphal song perforce. Can we, of this generation, be the other voice, more sonorous, more happy, singing the triumphal song? That was my question. And I resolved to try to answer it by being a good knight of Rizal, studying his tenets and sharing his light, similar to lighting other candles. Today, I want to put boundaries to my discussion of revolution and reform because, as is commonly understood, revolution is fighting a bloody war to oust a government suddenly. But I believe Rizal, in his time, was also a student of the American Revolution and the French Revolution. And after his time, the Russian and the Chinese revolutions, which all entailed millions of deaths of citizens. It appears from his writings that Rizal did not want our people to suffer. So he wanted our people to be ready to suffer, but while we're not ready to suffer, his view was that a change in governance would mean we will have a defective governance. So that's the parameter of my definition of Rizal's revolution, similar to use of revolution as in industrial revolution, technological revolution, information revolution, which are not bloody but entailing fundamental radical changes, at least in thinking and mindsets. So with that, let's go first to dealing about us as the Knights of Rizal. By our legislative charter, we are officially recognized and vested with appropriate powers to be a convenient instrumentality by which the teachings of our national hero may be propagated among our people to the end that they emulate and follow his examples. There's a third whereas paragraph. We serve, therefore, to propagate Dr. Rizal's teachings so that Filipinos and others may live like Rizal in terms of being worthy of liberties. In his manifesto of 15 December 1896, he wrote, "I have given proofs as one who most wants liberties for our country, and I continue wanting them. But I put as premise the education of the people, so that through education and work, they might have a personality of their own and make themselves worthy of liberties. In my writings, I have recommended study, civic virtues, without which redemption is impossible." So we must cultivate education to bring out the true light in each one towards civic virtues so as to help redeem the country from dark mindsets and constraining vices. We need to sharpen our minds and toughen our hearts along the lines of Rizal's advice to his nephew, Alfredo T. Hidalgo, from a Dapitan letter in December of 1893. And he said, Go ahead then, study and meditate well on what you study. Life is a very serious thing, and only those with intelligence and courage go through it worthily. To live is to be among men, and to be among men is to struggle. But this struggle is not a brutal and material struggle with men alone. It is a struggle with them, with oneself, with passions of others and one's own, with errors and preoccupations. It is an eternal struggle with a smile on the lips and tears in the heart. On this battlefield, man has no better weapon than his intelligence, no other force but his heart. Sharpen, perfect, polish then your mind, and fortify and educate your heart. Towards the end of the El Filibusterismo, we are treated by Rizal to a noble exchange of ideas between the dying Simon, who was Crisostomo Ibarra in the Nole, and the Filipino priest Padre Florentino, which exchange, I submit, gives us a window into Rizal's concept of change, drastic change. So the dialogue goes this way. Into the midst of the silence, the priest's voice broke, sad and deliberate, but consoling. God will forgive you, Senor Simon, he said. He knows that we are fallible. He has seen that you have suffered, and in ordaining that the chastisement for your faults should come as death from the very ones you have instigated to crime, we can see his infinite mercy. He has frustrated your plans one by one, the best conceived, first by the death of Maria Clara, then by a lack of preparation, then in some mysterious way. Let us then vow to his will and render him thanks. According to you, then, feebly responded the sick man, his will is that these islands should continue in the condition in which they suffer, finished the priest. Seeing that the other hesitated, I don't know, sir. I can't read the thought of the inscrutable. I know that he has not abandoned those peoples who in their supreme moments have trusted in him and made him the judge of their cause. I know that his arm has never failed when justice, long trampled upon and every recourse gone. The oppressed have taken up the sword to fight for their family and their wives. For their inalienable rights, which as a German poet says, shine ever there above, unextinguished and inextinguishable, like the eternal stars themselves. No, God is justice. He cannot abandon the cause of liberty without which no justice is possible. Why then has he denied me his aid? Asked the sick man in a voice charged with bitter complaint. Because you chose means that he could not sanction, was the severe reply. The glory of saving a country is not for him who has contributed to its ruin. You have believed that what crime and iniquity have defiled and deformed, another crime and another iniquity can purify and redeem. Wrong. Hate never produces anything but monsters, and crime criminals. Love alone realizes wonderful works. Virtue alone can save. No. If our country is ever to be free, it will not be through vice and crime. It will not be so by corrupting its sons, deceiving some and bribing others. No. Redemption presupposes virtue, virtue sacrifice, and sacrifice love. The sick man rejoined, well, I accept your explanation. I have been mistaken, but because I have been mistaken, will not God deny liberty to a people and yet save many who are much worse criminals than I am? Why has that God to give more heed to my iniquity than the cries of so many innocents? Why does he let so many worthy and just ones suffer and look complacently upon their tortures? The priest said, the just and the worthy must suffer in order that their ideas may be known and extended. You must shake or shatter the vase to spread its perfume. You must smite the rock to get the spark. There is something providential in the persecutions of tyrants, Senor Simon. I knew it, murmured the sick man, and therefore I encourage the tyranny. The priest continued, yes, my friend, but more corrupt influences than anything else were spread. From this fermentation of vices, loathing alone could spring. If anything were born overnight, it would be at best a mushroom. True it is that vices of government are fatal to it. They cause its death, but they kill also the society in whose bosom they are developed. A brief pause ensued, and then the 6 man said, what can be done? The priest said, suffer and work. Suffer and work, echoed the sick man. It's easy to say that when you are not suffering, when the work is rewarded. If your God demands such great sacrifices from man who can scarcely count upon the present and doubts the future, if you had seen what I have, the miserable, the wretched, suffering unspeakable tortures for crimes they have not committed, murdered to cover up the faults and incapacity of others, poor fathers of families torn from their homes, to work to no purpose upon highways that are destroyed each day, and seem only to serve for sinking families into one. To suffer, to work is the will of God. Convince them that their murder is their salvation and that their work is the prosperity of the home. To suffer, to work, what God is that? Replied the priest, a very just God, Senor Simon, a God who chastises our lack of faith, our vices, the little esteem in which we hold dignity and the civic virtues. We tolerate vice, we make ourselves its accomplices, at times we applaud it, and it is just, very just that we suffer the consequences, that our children suffer them. It is the God of liberty, Senor Simon, who obliges us to love it by making the yoke heavy for us, a God of mercy, of equity, who, while he chastises us, betters us, and only grants prosperity to him who has merited it through his efforts. The school of suffering tempers, the arena of combat strengthens the soul. Then the priest continued, I do not mean to say that our liberty will be secured at the sword's point, for the sword plays but little part in modern affairs, but that we must secure it by making ourselves worthy of it, by exalting the intelligence and the dignity of the individual, by loving justice, right, and greatness, even to the extent of dying for them. And when a people reaches that height, God will provide a weapon. The idols will be shattered. The tyranny will crumble like a house of cards, and liberty will shine out like the first dawn. Speaking further, the priest continued, our ills we owe to ourselves alone. So let us blame no one. If Spain should see that we were less complacent about tyranny and more disposed to struggle and suffer for our rights, Spain would be the first to grant us liberty, because when the fruit of the womb reaches maturity, woe unto the mother who would stifle it. Then the priest goes into many whiles. He says, so while the Filipino people has not sufficient energy to proclaim with head erect and bosom bared its rights to social life and to guarantee it with its sacrifices, with its own blood, while we see our countrymen in private life ashamed within themselves, hear the voice of conscience roar in rebellion and protest, yet in public keep silence or even echo the words of him who abuses the downtrodden. While we see them wrap themselves up in their egotism and with a forced smile praise the most iniquitous actions, begging with their eyes a portion of the body, why grant them liberty? With Spain or without Spain, they would always be the same, and perhaps worse. Why independence if the slaves of today will be the tyrants of tomorrow? And that they will be such is not to be doubted, for he who submits to tyranny loves it. Senor Simon, when our people is unprepared, continued the priest, when it enters the fight through fraud and force, without a clear understanding of what it is doing, the wisest attempts will fail. And better that they do fail, since why commit the wife to the husband if he does not sufficiently love her, if he is not ready to die for her? The sick man said nothing, so Padre Florentino, deeply mournful, said, where are you, the youth who will consecrate their golden hours, their illusions, their enthusiasm to the welfare of their native land? Where are the youth who will generously pour out their blood to wash away so much shame, so much crime, so much abomination? Pure and spotless must the victim be, that the sacrifice may be acceptable. Where are you, youth, who will embody in yourselves the vigor of the life that has left our veins, the purity of ideals that has been contaminated in our brains, the fire of enthusiasm that has been quenched in our hearts? We await you, O youth. Come, for we await you. That long passage, my friends, is more Rizal's presentation, I submit, of his thinking of how we should, as a nation, go up step by step in achieving our own liberties, becoming worthy of it. Because at that time, after 3 centuries of miseducation by the Spaniards, as he had told the women of Malolos, we have young people who are gamblers or just cockfighters, or they become the servants of the priests. What do you expect of them? But then, also in the Philly, Rizal had this conversation between the student Isagani and his girl Paulita. Isagani bragged to his girlfriend, wow, within a short time, all the islands are going to be crossed with networks of iron rails. Then the most beautiful spots of the islands will be accessible to all. Then, but when? said the girl. When I am an old woman? Isagani replied, well, you don't know what we can do in a few years. You don't realize the energy and the enthusiasm that are awakening in the country after the sleep of centuries. Our young men in Madrid are working day and night, dedicating to the fatherland all their intelligence, all their time, all their strength. And then he continued, tomorrow we shall be citizens of the Philippines. Take note, my friends, he used citizens, not subjects. Citizen is a sovereign individual. Citizens of the Philippines whose destiny will be a glorious one because it will be in loving hands. Yes, the future is ours. I see it rose tinted. I see the movement that stirs the life of these regions so long dead and lethargic. I see towns arise along the railroads and factories everywhere. I hear the steam hiss, the trains roar, the engines rattle. In other words, in this dialogue, Rizal was optimistic of the future Filipinos who will hold the Philippines in loving hands, working as citizens with full industrialization. That is one thing. We've been talking about industrialization since that time. Until now, the country is not really industrialized. Our basic industries are not there. Things to do. At the present time, we have our own contemporary challenges. A viral pandemic resulting in economic slowdown and so much misery among the poor from the control measures amidst climate change and environmental challenges now confront the Philippines and the rest of the global community of nation states, principally in terms of medical and financial aspects undergirded by psychosocial values and technological advances. And for us in the Philippines, our very free media are now into talk about the 2022 elections, which brings up the continuing challenge of assuring that our people's electoral choices are faithfully reflected and counted and respected. And which also brings us to Rizal's correlation of people and government. In the indolence of the Filipino essay, he said, people and government are correlated and complementary. A stupid government is an anomaly among a righteous people, just as a corrupt people cannot exist under just rulers and wise laws. Like people, like government, we will say, paraphrasing a popular adage. In the Philly, through the mouth of Padre Florentino, explaining to the dying Simone, he said, an immoral government presupposes a demoralized people, a conscienceless administration, greedy and servile citizens in the settled parts, outlaws and brigands in the mountains, like master, like slave, like government, like country. And in the Philippines, a century hence, he declared, every country meets the fate that she deserves. So, Sir Knights and friends, there are challenges that existed in Rizal's time that continue on today. Namely, how to make the people righteous, how to have just rulers and wise laws, how to make government moral and possessed with conscience, how to build up the people so they do not get demoralized and turn to servility and crime. In addition, we can add that we need to make our elections fair and honest and immune to the dagdag bawas or add-subtract machinations and political gimmickry of the well-paid political operatives. And now we have about 1/10 of our population abroad, outside the Philippines, most of whom are migrant workers, especially in the Middle East, whose needs are countless and recur daily. These needs require a focused one-command government multi-service entity, hopefully to be created by law within the first quarter of the year. On our expatriates, Dr. Rizal unwittingly created a theme song for them when, before leaving the Pitan in 1896, he composed the song and poem Canto del Viajero. Let me read it in its entirety in the English translation. Dry leaf flying aimlessly, snatched off by violent storm, thus lives the traveler on earth, devoid of north point, soul, country, love, eagerly seeking bliss everywhere, and this bliss just fleets away. Vain shadow mocking his desire, for her the traveler launches to sea. Impelled by an invisible hand, he shall roam from end to end. Memory shall keep him company of loved ones one happy day. In a tomb, perhaps, in the desert, he'll find sweet sanctuary of peace, forgotten by his country and the world. Rest in peace after so much pain. And they envy the sad traveler when he swiftly crosses the earth. They know not within the soul there is emptiness for lack of love. The peregrine will return to his country, and to his lairs may perhaps go back, and he'll find snow and ruins everywhere, lost loves, sepulchres, nothing more. Go, traveler, continue on your way, foreigner in your own country. Leave others who sing of loves, others who enjoy. You go away again. Go, traveler. Don't shift or hide your face, for there is no crying following leave taking. Go, traveler, and drown your sorrows, for the world mocks the pain of others. Can we relate to these words of Rizal, my brothers and sisters? I like Rizal's writings in the Pitan because somehow it summarizes his life work, and he put in one poem his vision for the country, that is a condition in the future stated in the present tense. He put that in the hymn to Talisay. He says in the first paragraph that the Philippine national territory from sea to mountain high is a sacred sanctuary. And therefore we must defend them very, very strongly. In the second paragraph, he describes the beauty of the valley and the growing trees where we want to return. In the third paragraph, he describes our souls have vigorous character and we shall grow in the future knowing how to guard our families. Fourth paragraph says, children who nothing can intimidate, not waves, nor hurricane, nor thunder, with speedy arm and serene feature, will know how to fight when in difficulties. That's his vision of the country. Fearless, able to fight if necessary. Our games, fifth stanza, our games scramble the sand. Caves and thickets we reconnoiter. On big rocks our houses stand. Our weapons reach everywhere. This really got me amazed because the last line there in Spanish says, Nuestras armas alcanzan doquier. Armas does not mean our arms, because arms in Spanish means brazo. It means weapons and weapon systems reaching everywhere. That was written around 1894. Rizal had that. Was he already imagining something like a multiple independently targeted re-entry vehicle, which was never yet in design stage? But he knew that that is what the nation needs to be able to protect sacred sanctuary. Our houses stand on big rocks, meaning solid, not the flimsy waves. There is then another reiteration of fearlessness. He says, there is no darkness, no pitch black night, nor fierce storm or typhoon that we dread. And should Satan himself come to sight, he shall be captured alive or dead. Such would be the fearlessness of the people, the assertiveness of the people, that all the corrupt and the thieving leaders like Satan, if they come to sight, shall be captured and alive or dead. That is the vision that we need to work towards. In the 8th stanza, it talks about our pond is no contender, our dive is so deep, and in the rowing, the world has no outrigger that in a moment can overtake us. Foreshadowing that far then, how our dragon boat racers have been taking first place in world events. He talks about we study exact science challenges, approach of S&T, and the history of our country. We talk in 3 and 4 languages, making both faith and reason agree. So for him, there is a conjunction of faith and reason. There is no conflict between religion and science. They agree and can be made to agree. And then in stanza 9, it talks about our being multi-skilled and multitaskers. Our arms wield with skill and fine accord, the knife, the pen, the gardening hoe, the pickaxe, the rifle, the sword, companions of the strong fellow. In the 12th stanza, he says, in the struggles that await man, subject to grief, pain, and ease, your memory shall be his talisman, and in the tomb, your name, his peace. In other words, the citizen is so connected, being in attunement with Inang Bayan, that in all struggles, the name and the memory of Inang Bayan shall be his talisman. And even if dead, her name shall constitute his peace. Here in the chorus of the Hymno at Talisay is one of my favorite words of Rizal. And it says, be safe, Talisay, salve, Talisay, firm and constant always advancing, you shall prosper. Every element, with you triumphant, sea, land, and air, you shall master. So the approach in Rizal's vision is that this nation, the Filipino nation, moves firmly and constantly, always advancing, like the mighty river flowing into the sea. That cannot be stopped because the water of the river will, if you put a blockage on it, will go through, go up or down or the side. And if you put an effective dam, will just evaporate and go to the sea. That is how Rizal was thinking of our nation as it moves forward, mastering sea, land, and air. Those are the elements of the change, the radical change that he wanted this nation to have, and that we still need to pursue. And for that, because of our mandate, our legislative mandate, we must be in the spearhead to realize these elements. More because if we are to remember Tacitus, it was said, what do we need good laws for if we do not have good values? We need to develop good values. As Pope Francis had observed, honest conduct is not established by law. Yes, indeed, my friends. We, as the Knights of Rizal, need to show and share why it is important for this nation to move forward, to be a country without reasons to cry, to bow, to doubt, to fear, or to be ashamed, that we must have honest conduct patterned after the values of Dr. Rizal. And so, we might remember that before he was brought to the Luneta, Dr. Rizal gave Josephine Bracken his Wandering Swallow, the book entitled Imitation of Christ, and he dedicated to my sorrowful wife, Josephine Bracken. I'm thinking that perhaps it was Rizal's way of explaining himself and excusing himself to his wife for leaving her in imitation of Christ. Because he knew that his death, which he faced so calmly, will awaken the Filipino nation, which indeed happened after he died. So how should we go about pursuing the continuing vision of Rizal that really needs to be realized and actualized yet? One of my favorites of his writing was a portion of his long poem, Miguel in Argamisilia de Alba, where there was supposed to be a deity who inspired Miguel de Cervantes, who afterwards, when he was released from prison, wrote the Spanish classic. Hold on. My battery is close.
Sir Edwin, we do not see you on screen right now. Yeah.
You can still see me?
No, just the name.
Okay, I will then finish this and I'll say, because it's already 10% less. That passage in Argamasilla de Alba says, and if you replace Miguel with the word Knight of Rizal, it will be challenging. It says, go then, Knight of Rizal, and with your clear mind, light bulb which shall illumine your land, redeem that demented multitude, shredding the dark, sinister shroud. And as a charged cloud, hurled gracefully, blazing lightning in your flight so lofty, to bring down the gods of insanity, making sprout celestial prosperity. I believe, sirs, ladies and gentlemen, that would be a nice way of pursuing the realization of Rizal's vision and continuing revolution as we live our lives here and now. Thank you very much. And I'm ready to answer your questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Sir Edwin, for that thought-provoking and challenging lecture. Before